Hello everybody, welcome back to Gyandan. Today we're going to be looking at 100 things every designer needs to know about people. Suzanne M. Wednesday. How people think. Chapter 28. Some types of mental processing are more challenging than others. Imagine you're paying bills at your online banking website. You have to think about what bills need to be paid when. Look up your balance, decide how much to pay on your credit cards, and click the right buttons to get payment processed. As you do this task, there are things you are thinking about and remembering. Cognitive. Things that you're looking at on the screen. Visual. And buttons you're pressing, mouse movements, and typing. Motor. In human factors terminology, these are called loads. The theory is that there are basically three different kind of demands or loads that you can make on a person. Cognitive including memory, visual, and motor. All loads are not equal. Each load uses up a different amount of mental resource. You use up more resources when you ask people to look at something or find something on a screen, visual, than when you ask them to press a button or move a mouse, motor. You use up more when asking them to think or remember or do a mental calculation, cognitive, than when you ask them to look at something on a screen, visual. So, from a human factors point of view, the order of the loads from most expensive to least is cognitive, visual, motor. Making trade-offs. From a human factor point of view, when you're designing a product, application, or website, you're always making trade-offs. If you have to add few clicks, but it means that person doesn't have to think or remember as much, that's worth it. Because adding click is less of a load than thinking. I once did some research on this topic. People had to go through more than 10 clicks to get the task done. And at the end, they would look up and smile and say, that was easy. Because each step was logical and gave them what they expected. They didn't have to think. Clicking is less of a load than thinking. Use Fitts law to determine motor loads. Although motor loads are least expensive of the three loads, you often want to reduce them. One way to reduce motor load is to make sure that the targets you're asking people to hit aren't too small or too far away. For example, when you ask them to move a mouse across a screen and click a button, or a small arrow on a drop-down box to show a list of choices. There is actually a formula that could be used to figure out how large a target should be to enable someone to reach it reliably when moving in a mouse across the screens. It's called the Fitts law. The formula is shown in figure 28.1. The formula of Fitts law. T is the average time taken to complete the movement, sometimes called MT for movement time. A is the start-stop time of the device intercept, and B stands for the inherent speed of the device slope. D is the distance from starting point to the center of the target. W is the width of the target measured along in the axis of motion. I don't expect you to go calculate Fitts law, but I include it here so that you realize that there is a scientific way to determine how large a button or an arrow should be. The basic idea to keep in mind is that there is a relationship between speed, accuracy, and distance. For example, let's say that you have a small arrow or on the bottom right of the screen, and the user has to move the mouse from top left to bottom right to click the small arrow. Fitts law tells us that they will probably overshoot the arrow if they move quickly, and they will have to back up and go to the arrow. Minimizing motor switching. One type of motor load is when people have to switch back and forth between a keyboard and a mouse or trackpad. This is especially true for people who are doing heads down data entry. If someone is typing or entering data from paper and they do it a lot and are very skilled, chances are they're not looking at anything but the paper, hence the term heads down. In this case, it can be distracting to move from keyboard to the mouse. If possible, keep people on the keyboard or with the mouse as long as possible to minimize the switching. Sometimes you want to increase loads. Most of the time, when we consider loads in design, we're looking to reduce the loads, especially cognitive and visual, to make the product easier to use. But sometimes you want to increase the load. For example, to grab someone's attention, you might add visual information, pictures, animation, videos, and thereby increasing the visual load of the product. The best example of purposely increasing loads is gaming. A game is an interface where one or more of the loads have been given intentionally increased to provide challenge. Some games have high cognitive loads because you have to figure out what's going on. Some have high visual loads where you have to find things on the screen. Some have high motor loads where you have to use the keyboard or separate device to move the cursor or shoot the villains. Many games increase more than one load. For example, if the game has both visual and motor challenges. Key takeaways. Evaluate the loads of an existing product to see if you should reduce one or more of the loads to make it easier to use. When you design a product, remember that making people think or remember cognitive load requires most mental resources. Look for trade-offs, for example, where you can reduce cognitive load by increasing a visual or motor load. Make sure your targets are large enough to be easily reached. To be continued. Thank you for watching the video. Like, share, subscribe.